Dr. Gabor Maté revealed a shocking truth through decades of studying traumatized minds in the dark streets of Vancouver and psychiatric hospital corridors. Your anger is not really yours. It's a ghost from the past living in your nervous system, a survival programming created in childhood that continues to control your adult life without you realizing it. Working with heroin addicts, violent criminals, and executives who destroyed their families, he discovered that behind every explosion exists a wounded child hidden behind the adult's mask. This programming was engraved in your brain like a silent virus, waiting for the right moment to awaken and completely hijack your behavior. The truth is darker than you imagine. That person who explodes is you, but not who you really are. It's who you became to survive. But here's what will change everything. There's a way to reprogram this system, to break these invisible chains that have bound you for decades. And when you discover what really happens in your brain during an anger explosion, you'll never look at your anger the same way again. When you get very angry, your brain's amygdala, the primitive fear center, hijacks the entire nervous system in just 20 milliseconds, faster than you can blink. Your prefrontal cortex, the evolved part that thinks and analyzes, goes completely offline. Stress hormones flood your body like a chemical tsunami. Your heart races to 120, 140, 160 beats per minute, and blood is redirected from vital organs to muscles. In that moment, you're no longer a rational 21st century adult. You become a terrified primate fighting for survival. That's why afterward you say, "I don't know what came over me," because literally, you weren't there. It was your trauma from decades ago speaking through you. Gabor Maté discovered that people with trauma history live with hyperactive amygdalas, in constant alert state like soldiers in a war zone, where anything can be interpreted as a mortal threat. You're not living in the present. You're reliving the past repeatedly without even realizing it. But wait until you discover why your anger works exactly like an addictive drug. Here's something Gabor Maté discovered working with addicts. Anger is a drug. When you let anger dominate your brain, it releases a cascade of neurotransmitters: adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine. It's a powerful chemical cocktail that makes you feel alive, powerful, in control. For a few minutes, you're no longer the victim, you're the predator. And this is addictive. Like any addict, you develop tolerance, needing bigger and bigger explosions to feel the same relief. That's why domestic violence escalates, why bosses become increasingly abusive. But the price you pay for this addiction goes beyond what you imagine. You become addicted to your own anger, and like any addiction, there's a brutal price. Your relationships transform into battlefields. Your children learn to walk on eggshells around you, developing chronic anxiety. Your body lives in a state of constant inflammation, hypertension, heart problems, compromised immune system. You're literally killing yourself with your own anger, cell by cell. And the worst part, you don't even realize you're paying this price because our society taught you this is normal. But why does our culture glorify something so destructive? Our society glorifies anger as strong personality, not taking crap from anyone, standing up for yourself. Movies, series, social media, all celebrate explosion as a sign of power. But Gabor Maté saw the truth behind this mask. He worked with 6-foot men, gym muscles, intimidating tattoos, who cried like children when talking about their fathers. He saw powerful executives controlling multi-million-dollar companies, but unable to control their own anger when their child left a toy on the floor. Anger is not strength, it's terror in disguise. And this terror hides something that will break your heart. Your brain can be reprogrammed. The neural connections that created this pattern can be undone and rebuilt. There exists a moment, a fraction of a second, between the trigger and the explosion where your freedom lives. Gabor Maté calls this the sacred space of choice. Most people never see this moment, spending their lives being hijacked by emotions they don't even know where they come from. But when you develop awareness, when you learn to pause in that critical moment, everything changes. You realize, this isn't my anger. It's the anger of the child I was. And when you stop fighting against your anger, something miraculous happens. Gabor Maté teaches that healing doesn't come from controlling anger, but from understanding it. When you stop fighting against it and start listening to it with compassion, it transforms. It stops being a destructive force and becomes a teacher, showing exactly where you still need to heal. Your anger is literally the map to your freedom. Each explosion is an invitation to look deeper, each moment of reactivity and opportunity to choose consciousness. But this journey requires courage that few possess. Each time you choose to pause instead of explode, you're literally recreating your brain, neuron by neuron. New neural pathways are formed, teaching your nervous system that you no longer need to live in survival mode. Gabor Maté worked with people who spent years in this process. Addicts who learned to feel emotions without using drugs. Parents who broke generational cycles of abuse. This doesn't happen overnight, but each small victory builds cells of freedom in your system. And when you change, something extraordinary happens around you. When you heal your anger, relationships automatically transform. Rebellious children become collaborative, defensive partners become loving, competitive colleagues become allies. Not because you're controlling them, but because you stop projecting your trauma onto them. You can't change anyone, but when you change, the world around you reorganizes. It's as if you have been transmitting a frequency of chaos, and now you transmit peace. But if you don't do this work, something terrible happens. If you don't heal your wounds, you'll pass them on. Your children will inherit your trauma. Unhealed trauma becomes transmitted trauma. Epigenetic studies show that trauma can alter gene expression, passing stress patterns to future generations. Your uncontrolled anger can literally alter your children's DNA. You have a choice. Be the link that perpetuates the cycle or the one who breaks it forever. True strength is not what you think. Strength is not never feeling anger. Strength is feeling anger completely and choosing not to be controlled by it. When you're not afraid of your own emotions, no one can manipulate you through them. When you develop authentic presence, you become an observer of your emotions instead of their victim. The most dangerous person in the world is one who's not afraid to feel because they cannot be controlled by anyone. Your anger has a greater purpose than you ever imagined. Your anger is not your enemy. It's your most severe teacher. Each moment of reactivity shows exactly where your unhealed wounds are waiting for attention. It's your personal guide to the parts of yourself that most need healing. When you understand this, each explosion becomes a sacred opportunity for self-knowledge. Your anger is literally trying to free you, but you need courage to listen to its message. And on the other side of that courage is the person you always knew you could be, a person who doesn't need to scream to be heard, who doesn't need to attack to defend themselves, who carries peace as a secret weapon, who responds instead of reacts, who heals instead of hurts. This person already exists within you, waiting for you to have enough courage to find them. They're on the other side of fear, on the other side of the pain you've spent your entire life avoiding. But the healing journey requires brutal honesty with yourself. You'll have to revisit dark places in your history, feel pains you buried decades ago, admit that maybe your parents weren't perfect, that you were hurt in ways you can't even name. And this terrifies most people. It's easier to keep exploding, blaming others, living as a victim. At least that way you don't have to take responsibility for your own healing. Healing begins with a simple but revolutionary decision. Transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a process where sometimes you fail, sometimes trauma wins. But each small victory, each moment of awareness, is a cell of freedom being born in your system. You're literally recreating yourself, choice by choice, breath by breath. Each time you choose to pause instead of explode, you're voting for the person you want to become. And when you break these patterns, something miraculous happens for future generations. When you do this work, you break cycles of abuse that may have passed through generations. You become the link that interrupts trauma transmission, creating a legacy of healing instead of destruction. Your children will grow up in an environment of peace instead of chaos. You become the healed ancestor that your future generations will thank. It's the most powerful gift you can give to the world. But it all starts with a courageous admission. Healing begins when you stop pretending you're okay. When you admit that your anger is out of control, that you become a prisoner of patterns you didn't consciously choose. When you recognize that the wounded child within you needs attention, not more violence. This admission is not weakness. It's the first act of true courage in your journey to freedom. Gabor Maté's work shows us something revolutionary. You're not condemned to repeat the patterns of the past. You can break the chains, heal the wounds, choose freedom. Millions of people carry these silent wounds, but you can be one of the few brave enough to heal them. Each person who heals contributes to humanity's collective healing. You're not doing this just for yourself. You're doing it for the evolution of human consciousness. If this content touched something deep within you, your transformation journey begins now. If you recognize your own story in these words, know that you're not alone. The anger you carry is the cry of a child who still waits to be seen, heard, healed. You have the power to become the loving father or mother that child always needed. Subscribe to the channel for more transformative content about emotional healing and neuroscience, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this truth. Together, we can break the cycles of trauma and create a more conscious and healed world. Your healing is the most powerful gift you can give to the world.